The morning started like any other morning on the orbital station above Mars. Commander Price woke up at exactly 600 hours, just like she had done every day for the past 3 years. She brushed her teeth, put on her uniform, and walked to the command center with a cup of coffee in her hand. The artificial gravity made her steps feel normal, almost like walking on Earth. Almost. Was 53 years old. Her hair had turned gray 10 years ago, and she kept it cut short because long hair was a problem in space. Her face had lines around the eyes and mouth, the kind that came from years of hard decisions and harder responsibilities. She had joined the space fleet when she was 22, fresh out of the academy and full of dreams about exploring the stars. Now those dreams had become her daily life, and she had learned that reality was both more wonderful and more terrible than any dream could be. The command center was already busy when she arrived. Officers sat at their stations, monitoring the hundreds of systems that kept the station running. Lieutenant Daniel Perry looked up from his console and nodded at her. He was young, only 26, with brown hair that he kept slightly longer than regulations allowed. Had told him to cut it 3 times, and 3 times he had forgotten. She had stopped reminding him. "Good morning, Admiral," Daniel said. "All systems normal. The cargo ship from Earth is on schedule, should arrive in about 4 hours." Nodded and took her seat in the center of the room. The main display showed the space around Mars, with little dots representing ships, stations, and satellites. Humanity had come so far in the past 100 years. They had colonies on the Moon, on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They had mining operations on asteroids and research stations at the edge of the solar system. They had built generation ships that would one day carry people to other stars. Remembered watching the first Mars landing when she was a child, sitting on her father's lap in their small apartment in Chicago. Her father had pointed at the screen and said, "Look, that's the future. That's where you'll live someday." He had been right, but he had died before she ever made it to space, killed in a car accident when she was 15. She still thought about him sometimes, wondered what he would think if he could see her now. "Admiral," Daniel's voice cut through her thoughts. There was something wrong with his tone, something that made her sit up straight and put down her coffee cup. "What is it?" "We're getting some strange readings from the outer system, near the belt." Daniel's fingers moved across his console, pulling up data. "It looks like. I don't know what it looks like. The computer can't identify it." Stood up and walked to his station. The display showed a cluster of objects that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. They were moving fast, faster than any human ship could move, heading toward the inner system. "How many?" she asked. Daniel checked his readings twice before answering. 600, maybe more. The sensors are having trouble getting a clear count." 600 objects. Felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "Get me a visual." The main display changed, showing an image of the approaching objects. Heard someone behind her gasp. She understood why. The objects were ships, but they were like no ships humanity had ever built. Each one was a twisted spire of black metal, shaped like a thorn or a claw reaching out toward the stars. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them look like holes cut in the fabric of space itself. They moved in perfect formation, each ship exactly the same distance from its neighbors, creating geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. "That's not human," Daniel whispered. Did not answer. She did not need to. Everyone in the room could see the truth for themselves. First contact. After 2 centuries of searching, of listening, of hopping and fearing, humanity had finally found proof that they were not alone in the universe. And that proof was heading toward them, with the look of something that did not come in peace. Training took over. She pushed down the fear, the wonder, the 1,000 questions that flooded her mind. There would be time for those later. Right now, she had a job to do. "Sound General Quarters," she ordered. "Get me a secure channel to Fleet Command on Earth, and start recording everything. Every piece of data, every sensor reading, everything. If this is what I think it is, the whole human race needs to know about it. The station came alive around her. Alarms sounded. Officers ran to their posts. The massive defense systems that ringed the station began to power up, weapons that had been built to protect against asteroids and pirates, not against visitors from another star. Wondered if those weapons would make any difference at all. The alien fleet took 3 days to cross the distance from the belt to the orbit of Mars. 3 days during which humanity watched and waited and tried to make sense of what was happening. The ships did not respond to any attempts at communication. Scientists sent messages in every language, in every format, using every method they could think of. Mathematical sequences, physical constants, pictures of human beings, maps of the solar system. Nothing got a response. Maybe they don't know we're trying to talk to them, suggested Dr. Samuel Wright, the chief scientist at the orbital station. He was a thin man in his 60s, with wild white hair and glasses that he was constantly pushing up his nose. He had spent his entire career studying the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and now that it had arrived, he seemed more confused than excited. Their technology is clearly far beyond ours. Maybe our signals are too primitive for them to detect. Or maybe they don't care, replied. She had been awake for almost 40 hours, running on coffee and determination. Maybe they know exactly what we're saying and they're choosing not to answer. Why would they do that? Looked at the main display, where the alien fleet continued its steady approach. 600 ships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. When you go hunting, do you talk to the animals first? Samuel had no answer for that. On the 3rd day, the aliens finally broke their silence. It happened without warning. Every screen on the station suddenly went dark, then lit up again with an image that would haunt nightmares for the rest of her life. The creature on the screen was not human. That was the first and most obvious thing about it. It had too many limbs, 6 or maybe 8, arranged around a body that looked like a cross between a spider and a squid. Its skin was purple and glistening, covered with what might have been scales or might have been something else entirely. It had no face that could recognize, just a cluster of dark spots that might have been eyes and a vertical slit that might have been a mouth. When it spoke, its voice came through the speakers in perfect English. The voice was flat and mechanical, clearly synthesized rather than natural, but the words were clear enough. Creatures of this system, we claim this space and all who live in it as our property. You will not resist. You will not flee. You will submit to collection and processing. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. The screen went dark again. Stood frozen, her mind trying to process what she had just heard. Around her, the command center had fallen completely silent. Collection and processing, Daniel said slowly. His face had gone pale. What does that mean? What are they going to do to us? Did not answer. She did not know, but she had a terrible feeling that they were about to find out. The alien fleet reached Mars orbit 6 hours later. They did not slow down, did not send any more messages, did not give any indication that they considered the defense platforms and warships arrayed against them to be any kind of threat at all. They were right not to. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 20 minutes. Humanity's finest warships, the products of 2 centuries of space engineering, fired everything they had at the alien vessels. Missiles, lasers, rail guns, plasma weapons. The attacks hit their targets, but they did nothing. The black metal of the alien ships absorbed or deflected everything, showing not even the slightest damage. Then the returned fire. Their weapons were beams of pale blue light that cut through human ships like a hot knife through butter. Watched on her display as the carrier Victory, a ship she had served on 20 years ago, was sliced into 3 pieces by a single shot. The pieces spun away into space, venting atmosphere and bodies and debris. The defense platforms around Mars lasted a little longer, but not much. One by one, they fell silent, destroyed or disabled by weapons that humanity could not begin to understand. and then turned their attention to the orbital station. "All hands abandon station," shouted into the intercom. "Get to the escape pods, move." Officers ran for the exits, stayed at her post watching the alien ships approach. She knew she should run too, knew that staying here meant death, but she could not bring herself to leave. This was her station. These were her people. She would not abandon them. "Admiral," Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "We have to go now." Looked at him, at his young face twisted with fear, and something in her broke. He was right. Dying here would accomplish nothing. If any of them were going to survive this, they needed to live long enough to figure out how to fight back. She ran. The escape pod launched just as the first alien beam hit the station. Through the small window, watched the place she had called home for 3 years come apart in a shower of fire and metal. She saw other pods launching, some of them making it to safety, others caught by the alien weapons and destroyed in flashes of blue light. Daniel was beside her along with 4 other officers. They sat in silence, watching their world end. "Where do we go?" one of the officers asked. Her name was Maria Santos, a colonel who had been visiting the station for a routine inspection. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, and she had spent the last 20 minutes giving orders and keeping people calm. Now that there was nothing left to do, she looked as lost as the rest of them. "Earth," said. "We go to Earth, we tell them what happened, and then we figure out what to do next." "What can we do?" Daniel asked. "You saw their weapons, you saw what they did to our ships. How are we supposed to fight that?" Looked out the window at the alien fleet, now spreading out across the orbit of Mars, beginning to descend toward the colonies on the surface. She thought about the message they had sent, about the words that still echoed in her mind. "Collection and processing." "I don't know," she admitted, "but we have to try, because if we don't, then everything we've built, everything we are, ends here, and I refuse to accept that." The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. The escape pod was not designed for long trips, and the life support system strained to keep 6 people alive. They rationed their food and water, slept in shifts, and spent most of their time watching the news feeds from Earth. The news was not good. They had not stopped at Mars. They had continued through the solar system, destroying or capturing everything in their path. The colonies on the moons of Jupiter fell in a single day. The mining stations in the asteroid belt were next. The research outposts near Saturn tried to flee, but the alien ships were too fast. Nothing escaped. And everywhere they went, they took prisoners, millions of prisoners. The first reports of what was happening to those prisoners came from a survivor who had managed to escape from one of the alien ships. Her name was Lisa Grant, and she had been an engineer at the Europa colony when they arrived. Her testimony was broadcast across every channel on Earth, and watched it with growing horror. "They sort us," Lisa said. Her face was thin and hollow, her eyes empty. "They have machines that scan us, measure us, categorize us. The strong ones go to one place. The weak ones go to another. The children," her voice broke. "They take the children somewhere else. We never see them again." "What do they want?" the interviewer asked. "Why are they doing this?" Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Food. They want food. We're livestock to them. Cattle. They've been doing this for thousands of years to hundreds of species. They have an empire that spans the galaxy, and that empire runs on the flesh and blood of species like us." The interview ended there. Lisa had broken down completely, unable to continue. Turned off the feed and sat in silence. Around her, the other officers were equally quiet. Daniel had his head in his hands. Maria was staring at the wall, her face blank. "Livestock," said slowly. "They came across the galaxy to turn us into livestock." "We have to warn Earth," Maria said. "We have to help them prepare, build defenses, evacuate people, something." "Earth already knows," Daniel replied dully. "Everyone knows. It's all over the news, but what can they do? You saw what they did to our ships. Our weapons don't even scratch them." "There has to be something," Maria insisted. "Some weakness, some way to fight back. No enemy is invincible." Thought about this. Maria was right in theory. Every enemy had weaknesses. But finding those weaknesses took time, and time was something they did not have. The fleet was already approaching Earth, and when it arrived, the same thing would happen there that had happened everywhere else. Unless something changed. "We need to go underground," said suddenly. "Not just on Earth, everywhere. We need to hide, scatter, make ourselves hard to find. They are efficient, but they're not infinite. If we can survive long enough, if we can study them, learn their technology, find their weaknesses." "That could take years," Daniel said. "Decades. How many people will they take in that time? How many will die?" "Millions," admitted. "Maybe billions, but the alternative is extinction. If we fight them head-on, we lose. We've already proven that. Our only chance is to outlast them, to wait for an opportunity, and when that opportunity comes, we take it." Maria nodded slowly. "You're talking about a resistance movement, a guerrilla war." "I'm talking about survival, whatever it takes." The pod fell silent again. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the fate of the small species that had dared to reach for them. Wondered how many other species had seen those same stars, had dreamed the same dreams, before they came and ended everything. She wondered if humanity would be any different. Earth was in chaos when they arrived. The fleet had reached the planet 3 days earlier, and the invasion was already had seen war before. She had fought in the border conflicts of the 2150s, had commanded ships in battles against pirates and rebels. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw as their pod descended through Earth's atmosphere. Cities were burning. Great columns of smoke rose from New York, London, Tokyo, a dozen other places. The night side of the planet was dark, the power grids destroyed or shut down. On the day side, she could see the alien dropships descending like locusts, thousands of them, landing in every major population center. "Oh God," Daniel whispered, "how many people live on Earth?" 8 billion, Maria answered. 8 billion people. 8 billion. Tried to imagine it, tried to picture that many human beings being sorted and processed like Lisa had described. She couldn't. The number was too big, too horrible to comprehend. Their pod landed in a field somewhere in the middle of North America. The navigation systems had been damaged during their escape from Mars, and they had no way of knowing exactly where they were. But they could see the glow of a burning city on the horizon, and they could hear the distant sounds of explosions. "We need to move," said. "Find shelter, contact any surviving military forces, figure out what's happening." They walked for 3 hours through fields and forests, avoiding the main roads where they could see patrols moving. The alien soldiers were different from the creatures on the ships, smaller and more humanoid, with armored suits that made them look like insects. They moved in perfect formation, never speaking, never stopping. Just before dawn, they found a farmhouse. It was abandoned, the owners either fled or taken. But the pantry was stocked, and there was a basement where they could hide. Posted a guard and told the others to get some sleep. She couldn't sleep herself. She sat by the window, watching the sky, where alien ships cruised back and forth like sharks patrolling the ocean. She thought about her father, about the day he had shown her the Mars landing. He had been so full of hope, so certain that the future would be bright and wonderful. He had been wrong. The future had arrived and it had teeth. But Price had not survived 30 years in the space fleet by giving up when things got hard. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, survived a reactor breach on her first command, led her people through a dozen crises that should have killed them all. She would not give up now. "I don't know if you can hear me, Dad," she whispered to the empty room, "but we're not going to die without a fight. I promise you that. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we're going to find a way to beat these things, and we're going to make them pay for what they've done." Outside, the sun rose over a world that had changed forever. The ships continued their patrol, unaware that somewhere below them, in a farmhouse basement, the seeds of their destruction were already being planted. The resistance would begin here. It would begin with 6 survivors and a refusal to surrender. And it would end with the silence of 1,000 stars. 3 weeks later, and her group had grown from 6 to 47. They moved through the countryside, picking up survivors wherever they found them, avoiding the patrols that swept through the area every few days. The news they gathered was fragmentary but devastating. Every major city had fallen. The governments of the world had collapsed or gone into hiding. Military resistance had been crushed wherever it arose. They were systematically moving through the population, collecting people by the millions and loading them onto transport ships that took them to orbit. No one knew exactly where the transports went. No one wanted to know. Cole joined them on the 15th day. He was a captain in the army, or had been before the army ceased to exist. He had been in New York when they landed, had watched his entire unit be slaughtered in less than 3 minutes. "They have these weapons," explained. He was sitting by the fire in the cave where the group had made camp, his face lit by the flickering flames. "Not guns, exactly. They fire beams of light that freeze you in place. You can't move, can't speak, can't do anything but watch as they walk up and put you in their containers." "Neural disruptors," Samuel Wright said. He had joined the group a few days earlier, having escaped from a research facility that they had raided. "I've been studying the energy signatures. They target the nervous system, overload the synaptic pathways. The effect is temporary, but while it lasts, the victim is completely helpless." "How do you know so much about it?" asked suspiciously. "Because I've been trying to figure out how to block it." Samuel pushed his glasses up his nose. "Before the invasion, I was working on a theory about dimensional folding, using quantum mechanics to create shortcuts through space. The technology is far more advanced than anything I'd imagined, but the basic principles are similar." "Can you build something to stop them?" asked. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. Not the disruptors that would take years of research we don't have. But I've been thinking about their communication network, the way they coordinate their fleet across such vast distances." "What about it?" "It's a weakness." Samuel leaned forward, his eyes bright with something that might have been excitement or might have been desperation. "Every strength is also a weakness, if you know how to exploit it. They have built their entire civilization around instantaneous communication. It's how they manage an empire that spans the galaxy. But that same network that makes them powerful also makes them vulnerable." "Look skeptical. How do you figure?" "Think about it. Their ships, their soldiers, their processing facilities, everything is connected to the same network. If something went wrong with that network, something catastrophic, it would affect all of them at once. Every single in the galaxy." Felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in weeks. "Hope. You're saying we could attack them through their own technology?" "I'm saying it might be possible. Theoretically. The network uses quantum entanglement for communication, which means it's instantaneous across any distance. But it also means that a disruption in one part of the network would propagate instantly to every other part." "What kind of disruption?" Maria asked. Samuel's expression darkened. "That's the question. I don't have enough data yet. I need to study their technology more closely, understand how it works. But if I'm right, if we could find a way to weaponize the network itself." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Looked around at the faces gathered by the fire. Soldiers and scientists, farmers and factory workers, everyone united by the simple desire to survive. They had lost so much in the past few weeks. Their homes, their families, their entire world. But they had not lost hope, not yet. "We need to find other survivors," she said. "Other groups like ours. If Samuel is right, this is going to take time and resources we don't have. We need to build a network of our own. Find places to hide, people with skills we need, equipment we can use. There's a military bunker in the Rocky Mountains, said. I know because my unit was supposed to evacuate there if things went bad. Deep underground, built to survive nuclear war. If any organized resistance still exists, that's where it would be. How far? From here, maybe 2,000 miles, across territory that's crawling with patrols. Smiled grimly, then we'd better get started. The journey took almost 2 months. They traveled at night, hiding during the day, avoiding the roads and cities where the presence was strongest. Along the way, they picked up more survivors, their group growing from 47 to over 200. Not everyone made it. They lost people to patrols, to hunger, to injuries that couldn't be treated without proper medical facilities. Memorized every name, every face. She would not forget them. She would not let their deaths be meaningless. The bunker was exactly where had said it would be. A massive door set into the side of a mountain, camouflaged so well that they almost walked past it 3 times before they found it. When the door opened, found herself face to face with a tired-looking general named Robert Hayes. He was short and stocky, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His uniform was rumpled and stained, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Admiral Price, he said, recognition flickering in his eyes. I thought you were dead. The report said the Mars station was destroyed. It was, I got out, gestured at the crowd of survivors behind her. We all did, and we're not here to hide, General, we're here to fight. Hayes looked at her for a long moment, then stepped aside and gestured for them to enter. Welcome to Site 7, he said. Welcome to the Resistance. Inside, found that the bunker was already home to nearly 1,000 people. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, civilians who had managed to escape the initial invasion. They had generators, supplies, even a small medical facility. And they had information. They have taken over 3 billion people so far, Hayes explained as he led through the facility. We're getting reports from resistance cells all over the world. The number grows every day. 3 billion, repeated. The number was almost impossible to comprehend. And that's just Earth. We don't know what's happening on the other colonies. They have jammed most of our long-range communications. Hayes stopped in front of a heavy metal door. But that's not the worst part. What could be worse? Hayes opened the door, revealing a room filled with monitors and equipment. Scientists were hunched over consoles, analyzing data, running simulations, talking in low, urgent voices. We captured a drone about a week ago, Hayes explained. Dead, unfortunately, or we'd know a lot more, but we've been able to extract some information from its implants, including something that changes everything. He led her to a central display, where an image was projected on a large screen. It showed a star chart, hundreds of systems marked in red. This is the Empire, Hayes said. At least the part of it we've been able to identify. It spans nearly a quarter of the galaxy. Thousands of inhabited worlds, trillions of subjects. Subjects. Species like us. Species that the conquered and enslaved, using them for labor, for breeding, for. He couldn't finish the sentence. Stared at the map. So many red dots, so many species that had faced what humanity was facing now. How long have they been doing this? She asked. Based on what we found, at least 10,000 years. Maybe longer. They've perfected the process. Move in, overwhelm the defenses, collect the population, move on. Efficient. Methodical. And no one's ever stopped them. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up another display, showing a different set of star systems. These were marked in black. These are species that tried to resist, he said. Fought back too hard, caused too much trouble. He pointed at one of the black dots. This was a species called the. According to the records we found, they had a civilization almost as advanced as ours. They fought for over a century. What happened to them? The destroyed there, then every colony, then every ship they could find. Then they hunted down every last survivor and eliminated them. Hayes turned to face her, his expression grim. They call it the quiet protocol. Any species that resists beyond a certain point gets erased, completely, nothing left but dust and memories. Felt the hope that had been building in her chest start to crumble. So we can't fight back. If we resist too hard, they'll destroy us all. That's one way to look at it. Hayes turned back to the display. But there's another way. They have a weakness. They don't fear rebellion because they've never lost to a rebellion. They're complacent, overconfident. They think they've seen every trick in the book. You think we can surprise them? I think we have to try. Because the alternative is to watch our entire species be processed into food, and I'd rather die fighting than live like that. Thought about what Samuel had said, about the communication network that connected the entire empire. She thought about 3 billion people already taken, and billions more waiting their turn. She thought about her father, watching the Mars landing with stars in his eyes. I have someone you need to meet, she said. A scientist. He has a theory about how we might be able to hurt them, really hurt them. Hayes raised an eyebrow. What kind of theory? The kind that might change everything. She brought Samuel to meet Hayes and the other scientists. For 3 hours, they talked, argued, drew diagrams, and ran calculations. Didn't understand most of it, but she understood enough to know that they were onto something. The network is the key, Samuel explained. Everything they do runs through it. Communication, navigation, even their biological processes are linked to it through implants. If we could disrupt the network, not just jam it but actually damage it at a fundamental level, we could hurt every in the galaxy at the same moment. How? Hayes demanded. You're talking about a network that spans thousands of light years. We can barely send a signal to Mars. Because we're thinking about it wrong. The network doesn't transmit signals through space. It uses quantum entanglement to create instantaneous connections between nodes. Every node is directly linked to every other node. If we could introduce a cascading failure, a feedback loop that propagates through those connections. One of the other scientists, a woman named, leaned forward. You're talking about weaponizing entanglement, using the network itself as a delivery system. Exactly. We create a disruption at one node and it instantly spreads to every other node in the network. No speed of light delay, no warning, just simultaneous destruction across the entire empire. What kind of disruption? Asked. Samuel hesitated. This was the part he had been dreading. A resonance cascade in biological neural tissue. Any organic brain connected to the network would experience total synaptic failure. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was saying. You're talking about killing them, Hayes said slowly. All of them. Yes. Every in the galaxy. Men, women, children, everyone. Yes. Hayes stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Tell me what you need. Watched the exchange, feeling something cold settle in her stomach. She understood the necessity. She understood that they had shown no mercy to humanity, would show no mercy, had been showing no mercy to countless species for thousands of years. But she also understood what they were talking about. Genocide, the complete extermination of an entire species. It was the same thing that did to their enemies, the same thing that had made them monsters. Was it right to become monsters themselves in order to survive? She didn't know, she might never know. But she knew they were going to try anyway. Because the alternative was worse. The work began that night. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, everyone with any useful skill was put to work on the project. They called it Prometheus, after the Titan who stole fire from the gods. Threw herself into the effort, coordinating the resistance groups that were still operating around the world, gathering resources and equipment, recruiting anyone who could help. She slept 4 hours a night, sometimes less. She pushed herself until her body screamed for rest, and then she pushed harder. Cole worked alongside her, leading missions to salvage technology from destroyed drones and equipment. Maria Santos coordinated the defense of Site 7, setting up early warning systems and escape routes in case they found them. Daniel Perry became right hand, handling 1,000 small tasks that kept the operation running. They lost people. Every week, every day, they lost someone to to accidents or to simple exhaustion. Attended every funeral, spoke at every memorial, held the hands of those who had lost friends and family. She never cried. She couldn't afford to. If she started crying, she wasn't sure she would ever stop. Months passed. They continued their harvest, seemingly unaware that somewhere in the mountains, a small group of humans was building a weapon to destroy them. Samuel Wright worked himself to the point of collapse, refining his theories, running simulations, trying to solve problems that had never been solved before. Led the engineering team, turning theoretical concepts into physical reality piece by piece. And slowly, impossibly, Prometheus began to take shape. Visited the construction site late one night, unable to sleep. The device filled an entire chamber, a maze of cables and circuits and glowing energy fields that she didn't understand. It looked fragile, improvised, nothing like the sleek technology of the. But if Samuel was right, it would kill billions. Having second thoughts, she turned to find standing behind her. He looked as tired as she felt, his face thin and pale from too many nights without sleep. "No," she said, "just thinking." "About what?" "About what this makes us. They are monsters. They've killed billions, enslaved entire species, committed crimes that have no name, and we're going to respond by doing the same thing, killing billions, wiping out their entire species." Was quiet for a moment. Then he walked up to stand beside her, looking at the device that would change everything. "When I was in New York," he said slowly, "hiding in the tunnels under the city, I could hear them above me, working, sorting people. I heard a woman begging for her children, screaming, crying. They didn't even acknowledge she was there. To them, she was just inventory." His hands clenched into fists. "I thought about killing myself then, giving up. It would have been easy, but I didn't. I kept going, kept hiding, kept surviving. Do you know why?" Shook her head. "Because I wanted to see them burn. I wanted to watch every single one of them die for what they did. Not just to me, not just to that woman and her children, but to every species they've ever destroyed, every life they've ever taken." He turned to face her, and she saw something terrible in his eyes, something cold and hard and utterly without mercy. "You're right that this makes us monsters, but we didn't choose this. They did. They came to our world, killed our people, tried to turn us into food, and now we're going to make them pay for it, every last one of them." Looked at him for a long moment, then she looked back at Prometheus. "I know," she said quietly. "I just wonder if there was ever another way." There wasn't. There never is with people like them. The only language they understand is power, so we're going to show them what human power looks like. He walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the bunker. Stayed where she was, watching the device that would end a war and begin a silence. She thought about her father again, about hope and dreams and the future that never came. Then she went back to work. There was a war to win, and rest could wait until the fighting was done. Outside, the stars continued to shine, watching without judgment as humanity prepared to show the universe what it was capable of. The answer, they would soon learn, was more terrible than anyone had imagined.